Welcome to Strong Conversations, hosted by Simpson Strong-Tie, where we bring partners, colleagues, innovators, and leaders together for insightful conversations. We dive into the subjects and issues that we all face, forging stronger connections and relationships along the way. In our How We Got Here series, we talk to leaders in the building industry about how they got to where they are. Some of us are born into the building industry. Some of us fell into it. And some of us took a few detours to find our place. Our guests share stories and insights of not only how they got here, but more importantly, what made them stay. In our Born Into It episode, we talked to Andy and Breezy Mitchell of Mitchell Lumber Company, who took over the business as the third-generation owners after Andy's dad passed away. Andy and Breezy share what it means to them personally to carry on the Mitchell Lumber legacy for future generations.
Welcome back to Strong Conversations, a podcast by Simpson Strong-Tie. I am Sam Marcoux, and on this series of podcasts, we are talking to the industry leaders on how they got where they are. Joining me on this specific episode, Andy and Breezy Mitchell from the Mitchell Lumber Company. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Real good. Great. How long have you guys been awake? Because you guys flew in here to Nashville, which is where we're recording this right now, music capital of the world. And you were not here yesterday. And we saw you this morning, and I think you said you guys got to the hotel at 5 in the morning?
Yeah, I think when you saw us, we were on 2.5 hours this week.
It's going to be great. 2.5 hours of sleep.
Yeah.
We're going to grip and rip there. So what do you guys do for Mitchell Lumber? What what titles do you guys have?
Owners.
Partners.
Owner-operators.
Owner-operators.
That's what we've always said.
Yeah. Titles are hard. For me, titles are hard because we do, we're doing on track to do about 14 million this year, and we do it with 30 people, but we've always had this culture of everyone does everything.
Yeah.
As cliche as that may sound. And I don't think that's unique in the lumber industry, especially in like small or independent coming up as quote unquote mom and pop lumber yard.
Right.
But as we've grown our sales, it's become harder to instill that kind of culture in people because you have to have titles, right? That's how you keep workflow going and stuff like that. So we just kind of go with owners. We try them on, and they don't normally stick because we do everything.
So who is the majority owner and the minority owner between this power couple here?
I'm the majority owner.
Majority owner, 51% of the company.
Yeah.
I love that. 51. So this is going to be fascinating for me because you guys are co-owners of the lumber company. I think third generation.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
We're going to talk all about that because that's literally what we're here to do, right? How we got here. But you guys are also married.
Yeah.
You have other interests, other things, other work outside of this industry and this business. We're going to touch on that as well. You guys have kids. I want to talk about that a little bit as well because I'm curious if there's going to be a fourth generation in the Mitchell Lumber Company ownership realm here. There's just so much going on here. I had a great conversation with you guys, kind of our pre-con, if you will, before we're sitting down here in Nashville. So I have so much to ask you guys here. But I guess where I'll start is how long have you guys been the owners of? Tell everyone where Mitchell Lumber is.
It's Belfair, Washington.
Okay.
Which, I don't know, in relation to the next closest thing is Bremerton, Washington. There's a Navy yard there.
Okay.
Puget Sound Naval Shipyard. That's a dart on the map, but it's about
an hour away from Seattle, an hour away from Olympia.
There you go. So Seattle's where, if you're not from Washington or the Pacific Northwest, we only know Seattle.
Right.
So an hour from Seattle. That's like me. I live in Livermore, California, and everyone's like, where's that? I'm like, it's an hour from San Francisco.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Belfair is really interesting. I mean, we have starter homes, renters, and then literally Bill Gates and the Nordstroms as well.
There you go. You guys have a Macy's there?
No, I mean, like they live there.
Oh,
yeah.
I see.
They have summer homes there. Yeah.
Big fan of Macy's.
Yeah.
So you guys are in Washington, right outside of Seattle, about an hour outside of Seattle. How long have you guys been the owners?
2020?
Officially 2020.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when his dad passed away in 2014 unexpectedly, he went back, and then I rejoined him in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. You mentioned your father. This whole Mitchell empire, 3 generations. Started with your grandfather, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Can you tell the story about how this got started?
So he got out of the military, served in Korea. He went into trade school and became a union plumber.
Okay.
And did, speaking of Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, did a lot of work there for, at the time, one of the big mechanical contractors. Worked his way up, became a superintendent eventually, and did a lot of years there. So he was plumber by trade. He and I was 3 or 4 business partners, friends, in 1968, I think it was, bought some real estate in Silverdale, Washington, which is about 20 minutes away from where our current location is.
Okay.
It was something like 12 or 13 acres, and it was just like an investment thing for this group of people. But there was an existing lumberyard on this property. And I'm not sure, it's before my time, exactly how it all shook out, but the way it shook out was that my grandfather, Jim, ended up being the partner that ran the lumberyard. Must have bought the business and moved forward from there. Over the course of the next few decades, they bought out the partners to where it whittled down to Grandpa and his friend Bill, and they kind of were still the owners of the real estate until 80. I don't actually know what year they sold it, but they sold it to somebody. But they still had the lumberyard.
Okay.
In 1984, my grandfather had a heart attack, had to go into the hospital, quadruple bypass surgery, and kind of decided he was done. He's like, I don't want to work anymore, which is like pretty awesome because I think he was in his mid to late 40s at the time. And
Wow.
I was like, yep, pulling the plug, no more work for me. And actually we have in the corporate records, I've got scans, I don't know if I have the original, but he signed over half the shares of the company at the time to my dad, Jeff, would have been his son. And that's actually on Harrison Hospital at the time. It's on Harrison Hospital letterhead. It's like handwritten in my grandma's handwriting, half the shares gifted to Jeff Mitchell.
So your grandfather in the hospital, obviously big medical emergency, decides, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
Transfers, you said half?
Yeah.
Half the shares to your father.
Yeah.
While in the hospital.
Yeah.
On hospital letterhead.
Yeah.
That is amazing to me.
Yeah, it's I mean, I didn't know that until, I kind of knew how it all went down, but I didn't know this particular little piece of background until after my dad died, and I was sifting through corporate records trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
And found it. I'm like, well, that's unique. That's interesting.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, so.
Not even sure it's legally binding, actually, but maybe it is.
I don't know.
Statute. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work. I probably shouldn't have said that on a recording.
No, you guys have lawyers. You guys will figure it out.
Fine.
So, 1984, your father takes over as owner for all intents and purposes there. You were a wee lad at that point.
I was it was like 3 or 4 weeks before I was born.
Okay, so
This all
you
went
weren't
down.
even
I
a
can't
wee
remember the
lad.
exact dating, but it was like 3 or 4 weeks before or after or something like that. So
I didn't know that part of the story. So your grandfather is transferring ownership to your father, who is expecting you within the month as well.
Yeah, I guess so.
So that's
Pretty hectic, huh?
Good, a little amount of stress on the old man right there, huh? New business, new kid, all that fun stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you were quite literally born into this industry.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. There's really like 2 paths that I can tell that people get into the building industry. One, they're born into it, or like me, you don't really have kids that aren't in this industry that are like, I really hope I'm in the building materials, industry as I grow up. It's not on that list of essay assignments that you have. You kind of stumble into it and then realize this is actually a really great industry. I think I'll stick around for a while. But you took the more what I would say traditional path, which is family was there, quite literally born into it a month after your father takes ownership of the thing. So you grew up in the business, around it. Probably, I'm sure, helping out as a kid at the lumberyard.
Yeah, I started working there. I show up on payroll. I show up on Social Security at 12 years old.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, pretty much.
Now, Breezy, were you involved in the building materials industry prior to your involvement with Mitchell Lumber, or was this you kind of took the path that I took, which is okay? Now I'm here.
Yeah. So we were actually dating, and I was working at Costco.
Okay.
And his dad was like, "Why don't you come to Costa Rica with us for a family vacation?" And I couldn't get the time off. And I was like, "Oh, I can't go. I can't get the time off." And he's like, "Well, why don't you just quit and come work for me?" And so I was like 19 at the time. I was like, "Sure." So I quit my job at Costco, and I was learning how to calculate board feet on the way to Costa Rica, and started at Mitchell Lumber when I got back.
That's an awesome onboarding program right there.
Yeah.
We're going to send you to Costa Rica and you'll learn the industry.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So 19 years old was when you made your mark. Okay.
Yeah.
I was saying I was 19 when I joined into the construction industry. So I feel you in terms of still very young in life
Yeah.
to go all of a sudden I have all this responsibility and I have a big boy job for me anyways. I was like, what am I doing here? But cool. Okay. So
A lot of learning on the job.
it's a lot of learning, and that's actually where I want to talk to you guys about, because you guys are the owners now. I mean, obviously, it's been in your family for a long time. You come in at 19 years old, learning how to measure board feet and everything else while on a Costa Rica vacation. Taking over for your father, who unexpectedly passes away. I mean, obviously dealing with a lot going on right at that point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have your own life. I mean, you're a firefighter, right?
Correct.
As well. You have your own. Maybe did you expect to take over the lumberyard? I guess you should ask that.
No, not at all, actually. I'd done X amount of years, sweeping floors at age 12, working up to learning how to drive forklifts at age 14, being a delivery driver. My dad sent me out on deliveries in our pickup trucks before I had my license once or twice. I can't really do that.
You guys are admitting to a lot of stuff on camera
Sorry.
here.
Sorry, Kevin. But so I had some time in the industry, and I think it was about, it was recession, coming out of recession.
Yeah.
My dad had property in the next town south from us, maybe a 30, 40-minute drive from us, that had been a lumberyard at one time, and we were expecting, did I know we were having a kid? But I was just kind of trying to organize my life. Like, I can't, I at this time was worked up to managing, I believe, kind of what you call the front end, the sales store part of the business. I was 23-ish, 21, 22, 23. And I was like, hey, I wonder if I could start my own lumberyard. And my dad kind of talked me through it. He's like, well, let's write up a business plan using this property. It used to be a lumberyard. It's in sad shape. So kind of walked me through it. And I spent a lot of time writing it all down, coming up with numbers based on what I knew from the previous 5 years of lumber industry, which is not a great previous 5 years at this time. I think this was probably in 2010 when I was doing all this.
28.
Was it that far back? But either way, right? Like, not a great baseline.
Right.
And I wrote it all down and I penciled it out for the rest of my life. I'm like, all right, well, here's my investment. Here's what I got to make. Here's when I'll pay it off. And then that's when I'll actually start putting money in my pocket. And I wrote it all down. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm not going to make a dime for about 20 or 25 years. This is awesome.
This is exciting.
Yeah. So maybe that was my dad's whole idea with it, because he had also, his dad hadn't envisioned him in the lumber industry. He didn't envision me in the lumber industry. He had kind of tried to push me in other directions and give me gentle nudges. So part of me is like, was this exercise his way of me doing the math and being like, yeah, this is a hard no.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided I got to get out of this. I don't want to suffer like this for the next, because during the recession, we literally were turning off the lights in the warehouse to save money. We were luckier than a lot of other businesses, because we didn't know any money. We were a cash business, but it still stunk.
Yeah.
We all took pay cuts. So that's when I said, oh, and he's like, well, go get like a union job or something. I think he meant like carpenter's union.
Right.
Go pour concrete, machine operators, go work for Boeing or something like that. I chose firefighting. Seemed like a pretty good union job.
Yeah.
I knew a few firefighters. They all seemed like they were having a pretty good time and had a good life and a good schedule. So that's when I branched out and said, yeah, I'm going to say goodbye to the building industry. So I went and did that. I still worked in the lumberyard here and there, covering him for his vacations, coming in weekends. I still had some knowledge. And then did odd jobs and eventually got hired on. And then in 2014, he up and out of nowhere passed. Yeah. And so it was a necessity, right? Like, I got to get back to this business and help my mom with it, because she had been removed. She had something to do with the business, but 20, 25 years in the past.
Sure.
So figure, we'll get it marketed, we'll get it in order, we'll sell it. And I remember having a big meeting with the employees like a couple days after he passed and being very open. Like, some of you know me, I've been here before, but this is not what I'm doing. So let's get this thing in order and get it sold. I'm saying I got 6 months or a year, we'll be here. And then that was like 10 years ago. So obviously didn't stick to that
Plans
plan.
change.
Yeah.
So talk me through that time if you can, because you're. I think we talked about this. Your father passes away, and how long until you're back at the lumber yard trying to make heads or tails of everything?
God, it was a Saturday that he
I think it was
passed.
the next day.
And I went in on, it was a weekend, and I was there on Monday.
Wow.
I thought, okay, this will be good. I thought this will distract me. This will help me, process, and this is what has to happen. And I went in that Monday, and it was evident to me within the first hour. I was like, nope, I need to take a week off. This place will be fine.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, who cares, right?
Yeah, right.
Pretty traumatic time in my life. I was 29 years old, fairly young age to lose a parent, especially unexpectedly like that. So, I took the week off, let it just be, and then came back the next week in full force and haven't really, and it was, I'd managed people. I'd dispatched, I'd driven delivery trucks. I'd kind of done everything from sweeping floors up to really a personnel manager, but I had nothing to do with the back office. I didn't know anything about, I knew about selling lumber. I love sales, and I thought I was decent at sales, and we had a lot of good customers that really were loyal to us, and we were loyal to them. Really, really did enjoy that. But as far as like making sure we don't go out of business or bankrupt, I didn't know a thing about it. Nothing. So
Breezy, did you come in at that point? Were you involved when you guys were forced to be more involved? Is that where you really started to take ownership, so to speak?
Well, I had exited in, probably 2010 when we had our second son, and I went back to nursing school.
Okay.
And so I was working as a nurse when his dad passed away. And then I came back 2015, so like a year and a half after his dad, or a year, I guess, after his dad passed away. It's all a fuzzy timeline then, to be honest. I got a call at home from our manager, said, our biggest supplier won't deliver to our yard today. And I was like, why not?
I was probably on shift.
And
being a firefighter,
and she was like, well, I guess we're not paying our bills. And so I gave her our personal credit card. I said, get it paid, and we're coming in. And so he came in, and he actually had to let go of our controller that had been with Mitchell Lumber for like 25 years, which was very hard and difficult because I had worked closely with him in the last few years. And he we had the money, the bills just weren't getting paid. And so we were in the office just clearing decades worth of piles of paper, just like throwing them into trash cans. And I had decided, at the time, had our third kid and literally like on my back in a backpack carrier. And I was like, well, I'll come in, and I'm on maternity leave. I'll come in and help figure this out. And then when my maternity leave is over, I'm going back to the hospital. And then I've always stayed. But it was learning how to do things backwards. Like, okay, I have an invoice for something, and then just kind of trying to figure out the process. I literally had no idea what I was doing in the back office. I had helped file before and post things with receivables and payables, but I didn't know what a general ledger was. And so while we're cleaning the office, I'm underneath the desk, like about to have a mental breakdown. And
Were you hiding, or were you just...
And that probably would have been the third one of the week.
I was cleaning, and under the desk on the baseboard, there was a business card that said Kyle Kincaid, CPA. And then on Andy's dad's handwriting, it said, call if you need help. And I came up, and I was like, this is a sign. We're going to call him because we need help.
Right.
And Andy was like, I called him when Dad died, and he's too busy. He won't work with us. And then, I don't know, Andy got pulled out to do somewhere, and I just called him anyways. And I told him the situation, and he was like, that's really terrible. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, can you please help us? He's like, no, I can't. I'm just so busy right now. I said, can you give me 1 hour? All I need is 1 hour, so I just know where to start. And he said, okay, I'll come out for 1 hour. And he came out, and he's just like this great, knowledgeable guy. He's become like our biggest mentor in the industry. And he's just sitting there, and he's like, his hands are going so fast on the 10 key, and he's like, it's not that bad. it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. And I'm like, okay, good. And he was like, I'm going to take you on as a client. And so then from there, he had come in. He had someone help me learn payables, receivables, the general ledger, and then he would come in monthly as well and make sure we were on track. And to this day now, if he says do something, we do it. We don't ask questions.
Yeah.
He's never steered us wrong. And it was literally, that was the turning point at Mitchell Lumber for us, was partnering with him.
That inflection point of, okay, we can do this and we can be successful. I just, for the listening audience, I don't want it to go unsaid that Breezy was in the back office going through decades of paperwork, mountains of it, while her third child is strapped to her back. I mean, that, talk about, just getting in as owners and being hands-on. You have to, right? I mean, that's the only way it's going to get done. But that's just an amazing visual to like, I don't bring my kids to work, and I would never, now they're too big. I couldn't put them on my back. But no, that is incredible. And that story of finding that underneath the desk and originally Kyle saying he can't help you guys. And then you also happen to be a pretty good salesperson. You get him there for the hour. He goes, no, you need my help and I can help. And going from there. So that's amazing. So Kyle's been around obviously for at least a couple of generations.
Yeah, so in going through all the old corporate records that I could piece together, there was some corporate, shareholder meeting minutes from, I don't know what year it was. But Kyle Kincaid's name was on the minutes as, an attendee on the roll. Yeah. So the way Kyle tells it is he graduated, got his CPA, and his first job was, and forgive me, Kyle, if I'm getting this wrong, but his first job, I think, was for Mitchell Lumber when it was my grandpa and dad back in the 80s.
I believe his office was above the lumberyard in Silverdale.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's news to me, but there's a lot of Mitchell Lumber lore that I've lost track of for sure. So
and Silverdale is the original location.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah,
Right.
it's no longer there. It was a pretty neat old building, a neat location on the waterfront. It was pretty cool. But Kyle is also a lumber kid. His dad was a big part of the Northwest building industry, part of the WBMA, the Western Building Materials Association. So he's in it for the same reason that I am. So it's in the blood.
So you guys had mentioned, you were gonna clean it up and sell it. Right? Yeah. We're gonna end our legacy. We have to move on. We have a nurse and a firefighter. Which, by the way, I'm gonna come hang out with you guys in Washington. I think I'm covered. With all health issues if I just hang out with you guys. But you didn't. Plans changed. It's been a decade. You're still here. You're still the owners. Why didn't you sell it?
Oh, we had. We went out and we marketed it. We didn't use any brokers, but Kyle had a lot of connections and he knew what we wanted to do, and he connected us with a few people that were maybe interested in acquiring the location, the business at least. And it's not that Breezy puts it best, but like if I had to put words on it, the business was much smaller than it is now, right? So the offers we were getting were like,
they were good, fair offers, but at the end of the day, we were sitting in our lawyer's office, who's also our friend, and we were arguing over like a very small amount of money.
Right.
And he finally was like, what is your problem? Why will you not take this deal? And we were like, I don't know. Why aren't we? And then I'm like, do you want to sell it? And Andy was like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, then we shouldn't do it. And so then we had kind of committed to, okay, we're going to do Mitchell Lumber.
Wow.
Yeah, for me, it was like a simple math equation. Here's the offer. And I'm like, well, 20, 30, 31 years old at the time, like that's not a life-changing amount of money.
Sure.
What if I just borrowed that much money? If that's what they're willing to put in, what if I put that in? Essentially is what it came down to for me. And I'm like, I'll just try it. It's the worst that could happen. I'll put that same amount of money into this business and see where we can take it.
I think it's emotional too, because it's been such a big part of Andy's family for so long. Yeah. And then, okay, now we are choosing to end this. And so that's a big responsibility too.
Yeah. How did the staff take it when you said originally, hey, we're probably gonna part ways, and then ultimately did not?
I never heard understanding. I think everyone that talked to me was very understanding about
Yeah.
it because most of the people that were there knew me from when I had been there before, full time, and they understood. They got it. I was, knew them, close with them. We were very small. I mean, there was
like 10.
10 employees at the time, maybe less. Seasonally, we
was
dropped
small.
in less than 10. So, it was a very tight knit group. I think they understood.
Yeah. And now you said you're up to 30 now, roughly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when his dad passed away, they weren't making it. The sales weren't even $3 million a year.
Right.
And so it was just a very different business then.
Wow. So not only did you keep it, but you've grown it and given people opportunities to work and either start their career or continue their career. I think that's just awesome. I love hearing that type of stuff. I do have some questions though, because we talked a little bit about the children. How many children do you guys have? Three? Three.
Yeah.
Okay. And you've got the age ranges are what?
16-year-old boy, 14-year-old boy, and 9-year-old girl.
And if I remember correctly, because we were talking on the phone, I'd asked the question, do you see a fourth generation of ownership for Mitchell Lumber? And I think it was you, Andy, said, well, if anybody's going to do it, it's going to be our daughter, the 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they all have been there since they were born.
Yeah.
I mean, we have pictures of them on the nail scale when they were little, but she was there every day since she was a baby until she went to preschool. And she's a force as well. So we have pictures of her with a clipboard walking down the aisles, and we've had to tell her to not talk. One time,
Chill.
she was writing on her her clipboard, just writing, and she can't even write it this time. And one of our employees goes, "Oh, Sophia, what are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm taking notes about how you're working." and we're like, "You can't do that." Yeah. So
she's not equipped for the employee evaluations quite yet. But.
Yeah.
Yeah, she has to work on her soft skills. Yeah.
But as far as any of them going into it,
they're all capable.
They're
all capable, but at the same time, it's just like Andy and I, we had to choose this. I want them to choose it. They're very lucky children, fortunate, and they have many options. And so I want them, this is an option, but they have to choose that.
We're here at Strong Conversations Podcast. We're talking to Andy and Breezy Mitchell from Mitchell Lumber Company, just talking about how they got to where they are now, which are the owners of this lumber yard, third generation owners in the family, possibly fourth if the kids so decide. Let me ask you this, the dynamic here. We were joking a little bit earlier about, co-owners and majority owner and all that, but we were talking a little bit right before we started recording. I imagine it's got to be, let's say, interesting, being a married couple, going to work every day, raising a family, having a nursing and firefighting career outside of this, and then having to come home at night and maybe shut it off. Does it get shut off?
Not yet.
No,
we're not. I don't think we're there yet with this
we're
business.
too involved still.
Yeah, we're very involved, which is good. I'm not complaining about that. I think that's what's pivotal to the success we've had. I remember a few years ago I tried to pitch this thing to Breezy that someone else had said. It was another husband-wife couple they were contractors and home flippers and rental and stuff like that. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we have a rule after 6 o'clock at night, no more business." And I remember pitching that to Breezy, and she's like, "Nope,
It's not gonna happen."
hard no." I'm like, "Oh, come on, please."
Yeah.
But
I start fielding phone calls at 5 a.m.
Yeah. There's no off switch, and she's right. You just can't.
But we both have our separate things outside of Mitchell Lumber, and I think that's how it works. So he goes to the fire department. So he's gone.
So she gets a break from me.
24 hours,
Yeah.
and then he's back for 48 hours, and then I keep myself busy as well, and so I feel like that is really good for us.
Yeah.
Because we have something together, but we have our responsibilities outside of Mitchell Lumber as well.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're there at the same time, and sometimes he's there and I'm there. But since we do it together and we share so many responsibilities, it gives him time to still continue his career as a firefighter, and it gives me time. So right now I'm on the school board for my children's school district, and so it gives me time to give back in a way that feels meaningful to me.
Yeah.
So we get to kind of unplug from Mitchell Lumber. It's not everything that we do.
Yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah.
That's an important, I think, way to have a career for anyone is to not let it run your, I mean, it's obvious, right? Don't let it run your life, but don't identify as that, right? Identify as...
Shouldn't be at the top of
Yeah.
the list of accomplishments for anybody,
Yeah.
right? Of what
Right.
they did for a living. Yeah, I would agree.
But we've always shared like responsibilities and kind of been, you know, we tap in and tap out. Because
Yeah.
when I was a nurse and he was a firefighter, we're both working shift work.
Right.
And so it was literally, there was times where he would drop the kids off at the hospital and I'd put them in a room and like turn the TV on and go finish an hour or two of work and then go home and then...
We did a lot of kid handoffs
Yeah.
in front of the hospital at like 5 a.m. on my way to academy or whatever. The work dynamic, I think, works pretty well, though. I think the most important thing is just pretty clear communication, right? Like, which it's not even just like the fact that we're married, but I think that's an important way to run a back office at a business in general is to just say what you mean, be clear, be respectful, and just know exactly where everyone stands on each topic. And don't be afraid to share your opinion or your feelings or why you disagree and your perspective instead of just being like, well, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
We could learn.
That might not be wrong, but here's my perspective on it, and here's what I've learned in the industry that's given me that perspective. Why are you thinking different? Let's talk about it.
And giving yourself grace and giving other people grace as well.
Yeah.
Because like sometimes I'll admit it, I'll be in a foul mood and he's like, you just need to think of it this way. And I'm like, you're right, I do. And so back and forth, you know, like, and we tell our employees that too. It's like, you have to give yourself grace and give others grace as well and think about intentions.
Yeah.
Because no one comes to work to do a bad job and no one shows up to be rude, you know, and so.
Let's, can we talk about your employees for a second? Because I'm curious, being around the industry as long as you have, and just, you know, I think we're all of the same generation here at this table, but what's that dynamic like? I'd imagine you have multiple generations of employees. You know, we're in an age right now in society where, in theory, you have 5 different generations on some level in the workforce. I mean, some are aging out, obviously, and others are just coming in. But between, you know, you've got the baby boomers, you've got, you know, the what do they call the new generation? Or not millennials? We're millennials.
Z.
And you
Is that
got
Z?
the Zs, and then
alphas are coming now too.
Alphas?
Like our kids are alphas.
Yeah.
You know, they're the.
I haven't even heard that. So they're alphas.
That's like the 13-year-olds, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Beats me.
So, and then you've got, you know, obviously on the older side of the generation spectrum, you've got a couple there too. So how do you guys navigate? Because every generation's different with how they want to be communicated with.
Yes.
You know, what devices you communicate with. I mean,
Yes.
some still love email, some want text, all of that, right?
Yeah. I think that you meet people where they are, right? And so right now we have a new employee who's kind of training to become a manager, and I was just talking to him, and I think the biggest piece of advice I said to him is like, you have to meet people where they are. You can't expect them to meet you where you are. And everyone is going to be different. You have to handle every person differently, every situation differently, and you have to be able to read the room and see, you know, because what works for this person is not going to work for that person.
Right.
And I think also having, like I said, giving people grace. I talk about that a lot with our employees because sometimes you have people from both ends of the timeline, I guess, and they see things completely different. And sometimes they're not willing to find that shared perspective.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Not everyone has to, but when you're in a leadership role, you have to be able to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
And then hopefully everyone grows from that.
It's great advice. Speaking of advice, you guys are teeing this up for me. What advice would you give yourselves 10 years ago? Taking on ownership, you know, this responsibility that's being forced upon you at that time of your life. What's something you know now that you wish you'd known then?
I'm trying to think of how to word it and not have it be so basic, but don't be scared to try new things in the business. Don't be scared to do something that no one else is doing. Don't be scared to make something your own. Don't just take risks, smart risks.
Right.
But and it's probably easier for a company our size to say where we still have a lot of control. But we've told a lot of employees this, where we're pitching some new, whatever it is, some new process or some new way to run this part of it, or some new staffing change or job title, whatever it is, right? And I don't know, what about this? What about that? We've done it this way. This has always worked. And what I've come back to a lot is like, well, what if we just try it, right? What if it sucks and then we stop doing it? And we go back to the way it was?
Yeah.
Is that going to...
So
you can actually do that. Like,
Right.
I think that's just one of those things that we get kind of ingrained in our heads in the industry, and probably most industries, is like, no, this is the way, this has always worked. And it's like, well, yeah, but what if it just, why not change it? Why not try?
Right.
I might mess this saying up, but it's people overvalue what you have and you undervalue what you don't. And so we tell our employees, like, sometimes it's the wrong move. Like, we've made wrong moves in dispatching, and we've had to backtrack it and be like, okay, that did not work out.
We screwed a
We're
lot
going
of
to go
stuff
back
up.
things to the other way. But I think also knowing what you don't know as well. So when I came on in the back office, and then I had someone fill in for me at the back office, and I was taking on more of helping, being a leader and managing the employees. When I went down to the front counter, and I had been at the front counter in 2005, but it had been 15 years, and I'm like, please explain to me how you do this. Like, they know better than I did, so I had to lean on the employees and be like, tell me what you think is the best way to do that. And some people can think that's a weak way to lead, but they know better than I do.
I don't think it's a weak way to lead, in my opinion. I think you're exactly right. I mean, the people that are closest to the day-to-day operations are usually going to have more working knowledge as to what works and what does not.
You have to include them in the decisions, because people, especially now, it's not just a paycheck. People want to feel like they're making a difference. They want to feel value in what they do, and they want to be part of the decision-making process. And I think going back to the generation thing, that's one of the hardest things, because people now, they want to be part of the solution. They don't want it just like, they don't want to be told what to do, and they want to know why. And sometimes that kind of questioning, well, why, that can come off like rude, but they generally just want to know why.
They want all the information.
Why am I doing this? Why is that going to make a positive impact?
And once you figure out what motivates people or makes people value their position, their job, or what makes them happy at work, cross generations, not even just generationally. It could be in the same generation. They could have two different things. One person might love working on a commission based, and it might terrify somebody else in the same position from the same generation. But once you're able to get on the same wavelength and lock in, like, there's no better. It's awesome. You can't put into words how well that works once you figure out. Once you guys meet, right? And where they are.
Well, that's when the magic happens, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and then you become unstoppable. And it's fun. That's when it really gets awesome.
So speaking of unstoppable, what's next for you two?
I think we're going whiskey tasting. Right?
Well, actually, our CPA has turned in. He has accepted an offer, and he's becoming our CFO on Monday.
And this
That's
is
kind of
this
the full
Monday?
circle. Yeah. Oh. Kyle.
This is Mr. Kyle Kincaid.
Yeah.
So that's exciting for us.
So I love that it does come full circle, because a guy who was too busy to potentially help you guys gives you an hour, takes you on as a client, has been helping you guys for the last decade, and is now officially an employee once again over at Mitchell Lumber as a CFO.
Yeah, and
we're very grateful.
It's I think it was almost accidental. I invited him out, and then Justin out, our IT manager out, who's also been in the industry for a lot of years as well. So they're kind of like the trusted advisors. I mean, they have their titles, a CPA and an IT manager, but there's a lot more than that. I invited them out I invited Kyle out, and then Justin invited himself, which is classic Justin. But
well, he was just meeting you where you guys were.
Yeah. And I said, hey, let's come out and let's just brainstorm on some things. I was like going full mad scientist on the whiteboard a few weeks before with just like margin strategies and stuff like that, and how to get some more out of the business without really having to spend a bunch of money on it, catching up on some things I probably should have been doing that those two guys specialize on. I said, let's come out, no agenda, let's sit down and just have a brainstorm session. And Breezy was we have a shared office. And so it was me and Kyle and Justin, like just going full nerd style, writing stuff down, just like giggling over 10-key data, like
Margins.
yeah. She's doing her work, just like, what? This is so boring. But anyways, we had this meeting. It went great. It was exactly what I wanted. And Kyle's leaving the room, and he goes, well, is there anything else you want from me? And through the course of this meeting, I was given like 7 years worth of work that I was never, ever going to be able to get done, right? And he's like, anything else before I go? And I go, yeah, I need you on payroll. And he's like, yeah, okay. And I was like, well, I was serious. Like, really? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, because I'm going to hold you to that. And then we had a few more conversations about it, like, do the actual professional stuff where you actually sit down and talk about it instead of dreaming about it. And again,
yeah, he starts Monday.
we sold him, and he starts Monday.
That's awesome.
So,
well, congrats on you two, for you two for getting him, and again, closing that loop full circle there.
Yeah.
It's gonna give us opportunities to do more too.
Yeah, it allows me to get out from in front of the computer, and I don't even, when you say what's next, I don't know, but I'll find something.
Have something.
If I'm cut loose from doing that work, and I have someone who's probably monumentally better at it than me and has been doing it for a lot longer, I'm gonna go find something else to hop into in the business and figure out, and it's gonna be fun no matter what it is.
Right on. Well, speaking of fun, last question I have for you guys, and because you guys are essentially splitting everything in terms of the conversations, lumberyard, everything else. I need different answers from you guys. I guess it would be the same answer, but I want to hear from both of you. You go to the lumberyard, Deal State, you got music playing. What's playing? What's getting you through the day? What's on your short list?
She doesn't let me play music because it distracts her.
I am kind of a psychopath like that.
Okay, let's say she's at the hospital doing the nurse stuff.
Black coffee and no music. No.
Black coffee, no music, and frowns. That's her work style. But it's probably like everyone's answer, a pretty eclectic mix. Because I heard you ask Mike that, and I was like going through my playlist, and I'm like, there's some weird stuff in here.
Just a side note, everyone has an eclectic taste.
Yeah,
in
that's
music,
right.
If I could ask one ask of people in the future, if you're listening to this,
Stop saying
tell
that.
me that you have an eclectic taste in
Take
music.
that out in post.
Yeah, I mean, just don't do it. Everyone, there's not one person on earth that's like, I just listen to REO Speedwagon, and that's it.
How did you know, man?
Actually, funny story. Our middle child is named Rio, R-E-O.
Yeah.
And it is a family name. It was his great-grandfather. His name was Rio Mitchell.
Yeah.
And so we named our son Rio Mitchell. And then finally we got a hold of like his great aunt, and we're like, where does that name Rio come from? And she was like, REO Speedwagon.
Yeah, well, not the
And we're
band,
like,
but the truck.
Yeah.
Back then.
It's just
But
funny.
so I thought I was gonna be a rock star when I was like a teenager in high school. Like I had little bands, and we played blues and rock, and I loved like Sublime and Nirvana, that generation, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden. But also like I listened to the classics. My parents had a record collection, and I still have it. Like I've got every Zeppelin original studio release Zeppelin album.
Oh, right on.
And they get played. They're not, beautiful. I was just listening to them with Rio the other day, actually, like kind of like, oh yeah, this is a great song. Let's skip this, flip that side. Let's go hear that song. Usually when I'm coming to work, I'm coming off a 24-hour shift or a 48-hour shift, and I'm like pretty tired. So I try and pick something that's going to uplift my mood. So I think, what is it right now? I just got turned on to, so I'm probably late to the show, but Tyler Childers.
I don't even know who that is.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. It's country, but it's not like the 90s country where it kind of took, or early 2000s country where it took more of a pop twist. This is really stripped down Southern rock, blues, soul, gospel stuff, man.
Okay.
It's so awesome. So I try and pick something that's going to make me not be super grumpy and tired in my 15 or 20-minute drive into the office in the morning. But I also have playlists that are called We're Going to Be Mad Today. I have those playlists, and those are like Metallica and punk rock and scream music. Like sometimes you just got to be mad, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to be angry.
All right, so Tyler Childers on a good day, Metallica and
Whatever.
Des Moines, Iowa's finest.
Yep,
on
that's
a
right.
mad day. What about you, Breezy?
Like I do value silence, so it's hard for me.
Simon and Garfunkel then? Sounds...
I would have to say
I mean, there's the
it's
disturbed
kind of-
version of silence. Sounds
I
like
love Jack Johnson, and it takes me back to when I started at the lumberyard and we had like a 6 CD disc changer up at the front counter, and we had a bunch of Jack Johnson and Dave Matthews in there, and it just rotated. And Jack Johnson, especially for me, I've listened to him for so long that there's different music that kind of fits in different parts of our lives.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of nostalgic for me.
We had a Credence day in the office when you were gone.
It all comes out
all
on
the
the
doors
podcast.
open.
They have
I had
so
the,
much fun while
I had the
I'm gone.
Bluetooth speaker on. One of our sales teams is on the same floor as us in the upstairs, and it's like this. It's all wood paneled, so it's like really echoey. And she wasn't there, and I was like, you know what? Today's the day. We're doing Credence. And I just cranked the thing up, and that's all you could hear upstairs was Credence full blast. It was awesome.
Did you know this?
No. It is funny though, because if you walk through the store, you get different parts of music. So front counter is always playing something different.
Yeah.
You go out to the yard,
Yard is
and it's
angry
like
music.
angry like metal music. It's kind of funny.
You got a hold of your Mad playlist.
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the playlist, I hope everyone here is enjoying the Strong Conversations podcast. Andy and Breezy Mitchell, owners of Mitchell Lumber Company up in Washington, just outside of Seattle, about an hour. Thank you guys very much for being here, and thank you guys for listening or watching this. Stay tuned for more episodes of the Strong Conversation podcast with more people in this industry wondering how they got here.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Strong Conversations, where we got an in-depth look inside the minds of leaders who are reshaping and advancing the world we build and live in.